What if Ferrari has been preparing something for the SF-26 that nobody outside Maranello was supposed to see? And what if the details of that aggressive upgrade plan are serious enough to leave the FIA president genuinely shocked? That is the question suddenly hanging over the Formula One paddock, because Ferrari's next-generation project is no longer being discussed like a normal development program. The language surrounding the SF-26 has become far more aggressive, the expectations are rising, and now a reported leak is putting the spotlight directly on Ferrari's plans. But here is where this story gets interesting. What exactly has Ferrari been working on? Why would the FIA be paying such close attention? And could this upgrade package completely change the competitive order? Before we go any further, remember that the details surrounding an alleged leak should be treated carefully until Ferrari or the FIA officially confirms them. But even without assuming every rumor is true, the bigger story is impossible to ignore. Ferrari appears determined to make the SF-26 a much more serious weapon, and if the team gets this right, the consequences could reach far beyond one race weekend. For Ferrari, this is not simply about adding a new floor, changing a front wing, or bringing another aerodynamic package. The real battle is about understanding an entirely new generation of Formula One machinery, and that is where the SF-26 becomes fascinating. Ferrari knows that the beginning of a major regulation cycle can create the biggest opportunity in years. Teams that understand the new rules early can gain a huge advantage, while teams that misunderstand even one major technical concept can spend months trying to recover. So why would Ferrari reportedly choose such an aggressive approach? The answer could begin with one simple reality. Ferrari cannot afford another slow start to a regulation era. The pressure around Maranello is enormous. Every season, the expectation is victory. Every technical change is analyzed under a microscope. Every upgrade is judged not only against Ferrari's previous performance, but against Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, Aston Martin, and every other team capable of finding something clever inside the regulations. And that is exactly why the SF-26 matters so much. Ferrari is not trying to make a small improvement. The objective is potentially much bigger, to create a platform that can be developed rapidly throughout the season while giving its drivers a car they can actually trust. But then comes the biggest question. If Ferrari's upgrade plan is really as aggressive as the reports suggest, what exactly has caught the attention of the governing body? Is it the aerodynamic concept? Is it the way Ferrari is interpreting the regulations? Or is there something deeper happening underneath the bodywork? One possibility is that Ferrari has been focusing heavily on the areas that can produce performance without creating obvious visual changes. In modern Formula One, the most important gains are not always the things fans can immediately see. A small change in airflow management, floor behavior, suspension interaction, cooling architecture, or energy deployment can have a massive effect on lap time. And when a team starts combining those improvements, the result can become much larger than any individual upgrade suggests. This is where the word aggressive becomes important. An aggressive upgrade plan means Ferrari may be willing to push several concepts simultaneously rather than taking a conservative path. That can be incredibly rewarding, but it can also be incredibly risky. What happens if one part of the concept does not work? What happens if the car becomes harder to set up? What happens if Ferrari finds performance but loses consistency? And perhaps the most important question of all, what happens if the FIA decides that Ferrari has pushed the interpretation of the rules too close to the limit? That is where this story takes another turn. Whenever a team introduces a major technical concept, rivals immediately start looking at it. They study photographs, they analyze bodywork, they compare behavior on track, they look for unusual flex, unusual airflow patterns, unusual packaging, and anything that could potentially give one team an advantage. Formula One has always been a technical arms race, but modern F1 has made that battle even more intense. A performance advantage of just a few tenths can completely change the championship picture. So imagine Ferrari arriving with a major SF-26 package that suddenly closes a gap everyone thought would remain for months. Would the rivals simply accept it? Or would questions begin immediately? That is where an alleged FIA reaction becomes so interesting. If the governing body is genuinely concerned about a particular Ferrari interpretation, the obvious question is, what exactly are they looking at? And if Ferrari is completely confident that its design is legal, why would the team be worried? The answer may be much less dramatic than the headlines suggest, because in Formula One, technical scrutiny does not automatically mean wrongdoing. The FIA constantly examines new designs, especially when teams discover innovative interpretations of the regulations. A team can be completely legal and still attract enormous attention. In fact, sometimes the biggest compliment a technical department can receive is that rivals are suddenly asking the FIA questions about its car. That is why the phrase FIA President shocked creates such a powerful headline, but the reality needs to be separated from the speculation. The real story is Ferrari's technical ambition, and that ambition could be connected to something much bigger than a single upgrade. Think about the way a Formula One car is developed. Engineers do not simply bring a faster component to the track and hope for the best. They build a development direction. They create a philosophy. They decide how the car should generate downforce, how it should behave through corners, how it should respond to ride height changes, how it should manage tires, and how much performance can be extracted under different conditions. If Ferrari has found a stronger philosophy for the SF-26, then the first upgrade may only be the beginning. That is the part fans should be watching. Because what if the leaked plan is not one giant package, but the first step in a chain reaction? What if Ferrari has a series of upgrades already mapped out? What if the first major package unlocks another concept that cannot be introduced until the car's baseline is improved? Suddenly, the story becomes much bigger. Ferrari could be preparing not just an upgrade but an entirely new development trajectory, and that is where Mercedes enters the conversation. Ferrari's biggest rivals will not be sitting still. If Ferrari suddenly gains performance, Mercedes will respond. Red Bull will respond. McLaren will respond. Aston Martin will respond. Every team with sufficient resources will accelerate its own development program. The result could be one of the most intense technical battles of the season. But there is another factor that makes Ferrari's situation particularly fascinating: driver confidence. A technically fast car is not enough. The drivers need to understand it. They need to know what will happen when they attack a corner. They need confidence under braking. They need predictable rear-end behavior. They need consistency over a race distance. And if the SF-26 can provide that, Ferrari could suddenly become much more dangerous than a simple qualifying improvement would suggest. This is especially important because Ferrari has enormous pressure on its driver lineup. When a team brings a major technical upgrade, every mistake becomes part of the conversation. If the car is difficult to drive, people blame the drivers. If the car is fast, the drivers receive the praise. But the engineering reality is always more complicated. So could this aggressive SF-26 plan finally give Ferrari the platform it needs to fight consistently at the front? Or could Ferrari be taking a gamble that creates even more problems? That is the question nobody can answer yet. And perhaps that uncertainty is exactly why this story has exploded. Formula One fans love the moment before the truth becomes visible. The rumors start, the photographs appear, the technical analysts begin comparing details. Team principals make carefully worded comments. Drivers avoid giving away information. And somewhere inside the paddock, engineers already know whether the concept is working. The fans just have to wait. But what if Ferrari's rivals already know more than they are saying? What if Mercedes has seen enough to understand that Ferrari is coming? What if Red Bull is preparing a counterattack? What if McLaren has its own response waiting? This is how a technical development story turns into a championship story. One upgrade can force another upgrade. One clever idea can trigger an entire development war. And once that happens, the pressure increases with every race. Ferrari also has another challenge: correlation. This is one of the least exciting words to casual fans, but one of the most important concepts in Formula One. The engineers can design something that looks brilliant in simulations, but the real car has to behave the same way on track. If the wind tunnel says one thing and the circuit says another, the entire development program can be thrown into confusion. That is why an aggressive plan can be both exciting and dangerous. Ferrari may have a huge performance target, but the team must prove that the data matches reality. If it does, then watch out. If it does not, Ferrari could find itself chasing numbers that do not exist. So when we hear that the FIA president was shocked, the better question may not be, deserves this much attention? Because that is the mystery at the center of the SF-26 story. Ferrari does not need to break the rules to create a shockwave. It only needs to find something clever that everyone else overlooked. And Formula One history is filled with examples of teams gaining major advantages because they interpreted the regulations differently. Sometimes those advantages survive. Sometimes the rules are clarified. Sometimes rivals copy the idea. Sometimes the concept disappears after a few races. That uncertainty is what makes technical innovation so fascinating. And Ferrari knows that. The team understands that the first major regulation cycle of a new era can define an organization for years. Get it right, and you can build an advantage that compounds. Get it wrong, and you spend the next season trying to repair the foundation. So perhaps the real message behind this aggressive SF-26 plan is simple. Ferrari is not willing to wait. The team wants to attack early, develop aggressively, and force its rivals to react. But will that strategy work? Will Ferrari's bold approach produce genuine performance, or will it create another complicated development path? And if the FIA really is paying close attention, will Ferrari be able to defend every part of its concept under scrutiny? Those are the questions that will determine whether this story becomes one of the biggest technical breakthroughs of the season, or just another overhyped paddock rumor. One thing, however, is already clear. Ferrari has no interest in quietly entering the next chapter of Formula One. The SF-26 represents an opportunity, and Maranello appears determined to take it. The real test will come when the car hits the track and the stopwatch starts telling the truth. Because no leak, no rumor, no dramatic headline, and no reaction can replace lap time. If Ferrari suddenly finds itself closer to the front, then every rival will know the upgrade plan worked. If the gap remains, the pressure will only become greater. And if Ferrari finds a genuine breakthrough, the FIA's attention may be only the beginning. Imagine a season where Ferrari arrives with a major upgrade, Mercedes immediately responds, Red Bull changes direction, McLaren accelerates its own development, and the championship turns into a technical arms race. That is the scenario Ferrari could be creating. So now I want to know what you think. Is Ferrari's aggressive SF-26 upgrade plan the beginning of a genuine comeback, or is Maranello taking too big a risk? And if the FIA is really watching Ferrari this closely, what do you think they have found? Let me know your prediction in the comments, because the answer could become one of the biggest stories of the entire season. And if you want more F1 breaking news, technical developments, Ferrari updates, and the latest twists from the paddock, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with us, because the SF-26 story may have only just begun.